showing up here. I guess we've been told that one of the reasons the attendance might be a little low would be the heat. So it's okay, I'm here for you. You're going to get almost individual attention, and that's just awesome. Now, I'm assuming that you're here because you like nature, because you like Letchworth, and maybe you have an interest in the arts, right? Yeah. My talk tonight, is supposedly about the challenges of painting the landscape, right? So I have more than just Letchworth here, because Krista didn't have to do just Letchworth. But in order for me to really give you an idea of one of the most important challenges in my mind to painting the landscape, I'm going to have to ask you to stand up and walk outside with me to the landscape for a minute. Would you be willing to do that? Let's go outside and have some fun. Okay, so look around you. Beautiful, beautiful landscape here. What do you see? And if you look in that direction, you see trees. And what about underneath the trees? You see, in terms of color and light, right now the sun has kind of escaped us, so we don't have a lot of contrast in the landscape right now. It's a little flatter in terms of contrast. So where the sun might be hitting that strip of grass behind the trees, it isn't the bright yellow-green that it might otherwise be. It's a softer, cooler green right now. And then over here, architectural landscape, if you wanted to do that. And over here we have the trees again, but there's no grass behind them. So what do you see underneath the trees here? It's dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's dark because it goes up a hill and into a wooded area. So you pick out, I'd like you each to pick out one of the views here, and I'm going to show you what I have to do in order to not be overwhelmed with everything, but to just pick out a composition that is going to work for a painting. And what I do is I make a rectangle like this. I have one hand facing away and one hand facing me, and the thumbs come up to the index finger. And then I just move around like this, and I keep moving until I find something that has an interesting composition. Do you want to try it? You can also do vertical just by turning your hands like that. And you'll see how I crop what I'm seeing out there like this. You see that? Yeah. You got it. You got it. So just look out at the landscape now and see what looks interesting to you. You like seeing that road going up the hill, get a little bit of that in there to get an interesting curve. Do you like this big tall tree here? Maybe you want to bring in close so that you can get more of the tree, or out further where you just get a little bit. In, you get a lot, out, you get a little. And that's how I, usually anyway, try to frame my composition. And I just keep looking and looking and looking until I get something that has a nice variety of values in it, meaning lights to darks, not how much it costs out there, but value. Huh?
You never cheat a little bit?
I always cheat.
Because I was like,
It'd be no fun
at that
if I didn't.
tree-trunked oak over there. I like the way they're all spreading apart, but I want to get rid of the parking lot.
And I guess that's called artistic license. Absolutely.
Cool.
I cheat all the time.
Okay.
How boring if I didn't. So that's the biggest challenge. That's where I start. So I did this. I wanted to have that tree in there, so I just moved my little viewfinder, we'll call this, until I got things in a harmonious, balanced kind of situation. So these images are a little bit washed out, so I guess maybe we've got a super bright bulb in this thing, but we'll do what we can with this, okay? This is, and it's also squished in this way. computer's viewfinder has changed the composition for us. It's squished it in and made it taller. So this would normally be like that.
Right.
So there's quite a huge
Yeah.
difference here in terms
Yeah,
of
and how
the
much
depth
it's
of color
Yeah.
and the actual scale, the ratio of height to width here. But we'll talk about it the best we can here. Just wondering if I can.
Do those lights make any difference if you turn those?
It's really the,
Yeah.
whatever the
it's a
signal's coming
projector.
from here to there is.
There's something.
Just point it on here.
Well, it's washed out a little bit, but not that much. You can still get an idea. Anyway, this, anybody know where this is?
It's up the clouds.
It's the Upper Falls.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Now, one of the challenges, another big challenge for me as a landscape artist is to express how I feel about what I'm seeing. Okay? Not just put down the greens where I see the greens, not just to put down whatever browns where I see the browns. That gets kind of boring for me. And when I'm in a beautiful place and I'm having a wonderful experience looking at this place and feeling the place and hearing it, touching it, there's so much more to my experience than the visual part of it. So what do I do as a landscape artist? I feel that it's important for me to try to bring in the others, do something to bring in what the other senses, and if you will, my spiritual experience while I'm there, all these things that are happening that are much more than just looking and seeing, So I'm trying to bring in a sense of all the other incredible excitement and enthusiasm that I feel in a particular place by making the colors a little more interesting. And in some cases, they might even look a little jewel-like. However, it's a little washed out here, so you don't get the amethyst, the amethyst colors and the other colors here. But the way I feel about Letchworth is it's a gem of a gorge. So I had to make these pieces represent that feeling of this being like a gem to me. Okay, we can move on to the next one. Yes, this is the next one. Wait, no,
No, that's the same one.
There it is.
so we're not going in the order. I don't know what's going on here. Let's see. It isn't.
The falls is taller.
Yeah. What I did after I did the other one, which was a smaller, I think it was probably around 9 by 12, I felt that I had been able to capture something special in that for me, and I wanted to do a larger piece. But I thought I'd also get in a little closer to the falls and just change the composition a little bit, and I pushed the colors a little bit more here. So this is the way that I sometimes work. I'll do a small piece, and then if I really like what's happening and it seems like it's going to be really good as a larger piece, I'll do that. So what I didn't put in here is a little strip of turquoise sky that was in the other one, and I have more of this kind of a citrine green in the water because I really like the way those colors work together. And again, I'm going to just give you a peek at, the difference in the colors. So you can see that and the composition.
Sorry. location, do you complete the whole picture on
No.
location at one time, or take
No.
a picture? Or?
No, sometimes I will start a piece on location, and then I take photos,
Okay.
and I take the photos back to my wonderful studio, where I can work without any light changing, and bugs biting,
Yeah.
wind blowing easements down, stuff like that. So I prefer to work in my studio most of the time for those reasons. You know, it allows me to really take the time to develop a piece with a lot of layers. These pieces are all pastel except for one, which you'll be seeing later. Pastel on artist sandpaper. And I'm using sandpaper because it has enough tooth to grab the pastel without creating mud if I put more colors on top. Without that kind of tooth, pastel goes to mud very quick.
Yeah.
And it's, pastel is actually the purest medium of all the art mediums. So you don't want to lose that by using the wrong kind of surface and getting mud. So it's really quite amazing because the colors that you get, and you'll be able to see some of these when the lights come back on, are unequaled by any other medium.
Yeah, some of the transparencies of the color layering are somewhat similar to watercolor, but
Yeah, yeah. Watercolor, you actually work light to dark.
right.
Pastels, it's better to work dark to
Oh.
light and let the lighter colors sit on top of
Oh.
the darker ones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very similar to the,
Right,
well,
because with
the way oil
pastels you can
painting.
put light color on, whereas with watercolor you just
Right.
have to like leave it blank
Yeah,
or mask it or something.
right, yeah.
Hadn't thought of that.
So it's also the traditional way to use oil paints too,
Yeah,
is dark
yeah.
to light. Okay. So this is, anybody know where this is?
Middle falls,
Got it, in that view where you're looking down from
right at the
the,
brink there.
from the sidewalk there. And again, I push the colors, oh yeah. This is much truer. The challenge for me when I'm pushing the colors is to push them just enough without getting too crazy so that you can't identify what it is. They're kind of, most of my work borders abstract. If it has a good abstract composition, it's going to have a good composition. And if I have the values correct, I can pretty much use any color I want. So in other words, this area in the back up here, when I was looking at it, it was very dark because of the way the position of the sun was. So I had to put something dark in there. So I chose dark purples and blues. There was some red kind of foliage going on in there, so I just scribbled that in. I don't do a lot of detail because I just don't feel it's necessary to grab the feeling of what you're looking at. And it just looks tedious then instead of, I like a more free, kind of spontaneous feel to my work. And you see, I did get a little detailed in the ripples of the water on the rocks.
Yeah, that's very nice.
So that's probably the most detailed part of that piece. So this is again the same place, only, voila, there was a rainbow that one day. So I did that, and again, we'll see. Get to see it both ways.
Yeah.
Here, can you see?
That's nice.
Those pieces that I've been showing you are a few years old. And I just went back to Letchworth, came back here last year, and I actually did set up and worked on site for this piece, which is terribly washed out. But you might see that it's a lot looser even than the other ones. I think I'm getting in some cases more abstract, playing more with the color. And you know, I put my pieces, I have them taped up on boards all around my studio, and when I'm working. And some sometimes they stay up for many months, sometimes even a couple years before I feel like, okay, it's ready to be taken off the board and be framed. I just am not always happy with something right away, and I like to come back and look at it, contemplate it. So I kind of felt that I just wanted to experiment a little bit more with this last piece, and maybe not be quite as crazy with the colors. So I actually went over it, which I was able to do because it was pastel and I was on sandpaper with a lot of tooth. So I actually kind of made the colors a little more realistic. Not too sure I like it as much, but that's okay. You know, I can do another one. Or I can change it again. This is the last one that I've done of Letchworth, and I actually did that just last month. And it's a little guy. It's that little guy right there. There. 8 by 10. What was I looking for there? I liked the way the trees were framing the view, and you could look through those trees down in there and also get a sense of the distance. And how do you paint the atmosphere? You know, the atmosphere actually makes things appear bluer as they get further away in the landscape. So why not make it really blue? What the heck? It's an art. You know, it's an art image. I can do whatever I want. So I made it really blue. Whereas in reality, it would be softer gray blue, but boring to me. So that's my latest Letchworth right there. Let's see what we can do. Very, I'm gonna bring it up again so you can see the difference. So we're losing a lot of color up there. That's a shame. So Hemlock Lake. Is anybody else a Hemlock Lake lover here? Yeah? Do you know what it is on the right side? That's one of the things that intrigues me most about Hemlock Lake is from the north end looking down. There's that little peninsula that comes out, and that's Mission Cove. And especially towards the latter part of the day, the light hits that in such a way, just like that. So you see this this lighter green, yellow green, depending on what the situation is with the sun, really defining Mission Cove, and I just get a hoot out of that. So I like to paint that. I've painted it, I don't know how many times, but lots of times. This is what we do. Let's see how we're doing tonight. This is just a very small piece, really small. I think it's 3 by 9, it's not 6 by 9, I'm not sure. 3 or 4 by 9. Just a very quick study again of Hemlock Lake and Mission Cove again. Okay. Just wanted to see how, I mean that might have taken me half an hour, whereas some of these other ones might have taken me a couple hundred hours. They all took 35 years or so actually. Yeah. By the time, you know, if you consider where I started. Anybody know where that is? We're not in Letchworth anymore.
Green Lake,
No? Green Lake, did you say?
that's what I said.
No. This is what I call Canada's mandala. And I chose this for the cover of our book, Hemlock and Canada's Lakes. Mandala because of the way the arched branch is reflected and creates almost a circle. And mandala also because there's a center in there that creates a bit of a focus. Now this piece is kind of a pivotal piece because what happened to me is when I heard in 2007 that the city of Rochester wanted to sell Hemlock and Canada's lake watersheds, I really freaked out. I said, no, those lakes cannot be developed. No, no, no. What do I have to do to keep this from happening? Is there anything I can do? So I suddenly became an environmental activist. And I went down to the lakes and I said, what can I do? I prayed. And the answer came to me, do a body of work. I already had done plenty of pieces of these lakes. I'd had workshops there, and I had sold quite a few images of the lakes because I love them so much that I put my heart and soul into these paintings. And when you put your heart and soul into anything, it has a heck of a lot more energy than if you didn't. So my husband's a photographer, professional photographer. He had already done a number of photos of the lakes. So we felt that we should have a show, an art show, Canadice and Hemlock Lakes, or Hemlock and Canadice Lakes. So we did. We were able to book a gallery up in Rochester. We had quite a few pieces in the show. A couple weeks before the show was to open, the inner voice said, do a book. And I went, what? Do a book? Me? I'm tired. I've been doing all this, do a book. So hence this book came about. And then from there, the media found out about the whole thing, the art show, and it was quite a controversial thing at that time anyway about the lakes, but still a lot of people did not know about it. So our mission was to inform people about these lakes, how special they are and that they were at risk. So I was able to actually get this book done within 2 weeks and had it ready for the opening. Yeah, don't ask me how I did it. It was like burning the midnight candle, right? Many nights. And the media got a hold of it. It got a lot of exposure. And people that didn't know about this environmental issue before suddenly knew about it. And I actually got letters and checks from strangers all over the country that somehow had heard about this, they wanted the book. And they were thanking me, and they were saying how special their memories are of these lakes, and it was just a very special thing for them. So I went, wow, what's going on here? And I realized at that point that, yeah, just doing landscapes is fine. It increases people's appreciation if they like the work. It increases their appreciation of nature. And hopefully that would inspire them to honor and protect it as well. But this was a pivotal point for me, and I became as much of an activist, an environmental activist, as an artist, maybe even more so. I don't know how you gauge that. I think it goes back and forth. So that was a turning point. So I really got crazy with the colors here, and yeah, you really want to see they're much richer. That's Canadice Lake. I just said, gee, let's have fun. So I had a little more fun with this one. So a friend of mine had taken a photo of his daughter in a canoe on Canadice Lake, and he commissioned me to do a painting of that. And the photo was just so wonderful to work from. I absolutely enjoy doing this because the color was already there. I didn't even have to change it too much at all to make it really wonderful. And it has that extra element of having a person in it too, doing something, enjoying Canadice Lake. Okay, so here's another challenge as an artist. One has to be willing to get up and go and run if you have to get there when the light is just right. So one day, husband and I were sitting on the deck eating dinner, and I noticed this incredible light in the sky, and I noticed clouds that were catching the light, and I said, wow, we've got to go to Hemlock Lake. Now, fortunately, Hemlock Lake was only 15 minutes away. The cats enjoyed our dinner. And we enjoyed Canada's Lake on the most magnificent, light-filled, color-filled, early evening you can imagine. Anybody know what that is on the right? Chris knows. Come on.
Mission Cove or something?
Mission Cove. There we go again. Yeah. Did I paint it enough times? Okay. Okay, this piece is actually quite large. It was an attempt. Oh wow. Yeah. You can see the colors though, because they are washed out. This was an attempt to more completely express the way I feel when I'm at the north end of Hemlock Lake. And of course, Mission Cove is there again. But this piece is actually 27 by 40 inches. It's quite large. And to me, I just needed to do that, and this piece had to be almost completely about light. And so it's about light, it's big, and it gives me, and hopefully the viewer, a clearer sense of what it's like to be on Hemlock Lake. So this was from the shore. Sometimes water level is low enough so that you can walk along the shoreline. And we love it when it's like that because it's just a wonderful, wonderful walk. And you can get views like this. And so this one, I think, is a more recent one, actually. Okay. I was given an opportunity to have a solo show in Central Florida in 2010. And after having experienced what I did with the Hemlock Canadice activism and becoming more interested in wanting to preserve nature, I accepted that opportunity and I started working on environmental issues in Central Florida. And this piece actually is Rainbow Springs. Has anybody ever been down there to Rainbow Springs? It's really an incredibly beautiful place. It's pristine. The water is clear. You can look down. I don't remember how many feet, but it's crystal clear. It's starting to get a little messed up though because of pollution, unfortunately. So all the pieces I put in my Florida show were addressing what's at risk, how beautiful things are. Let's not lose them. In 1965, the only nesting pair of bald eagles in the state was on Hemlock Lake. And when I found out about that, I wanted to paint the birds. And I was able to get the original photographs that were done by Tom Relber, who found the nest, found the eagles. He lives in Dansville. And actually has a book out that just came out now of all the monitoring he did. It's absolutely amazing. This pair right here, they were the ones responsible for the whole restoration project of the bald eagle in our country. And they could not have, none of their eggs could hatch for a long time because of DDT and other chemical poisoning. But in 1973, they finally were able to have a successful hatch. That's a little baby up there. And from there, all the rest is history. The bald eagles are here. They're not endangered anymore. They've made a strong comeback. And it's a long story, but I'm not going to get into it now because we don't have time. And this is a large piece too. It's 40 by 48. It's very large. Okay, this is also Rainbow Springs. It's from another vantage point. And that's during the golden hour, which is just before sunset, and the golden light casts this beautiful color. Okay, and that's the Ocklawaha River, which is one of the many rivers in Florida that's at risk because of pollution. And also, this one was at one point really at risk because there was this plan to have a cross Florida canal that fortunately got nixed by Nixon. And that cross Florida canal would have destroyed this river, and it's really gorgeous. So yeah, push the colors. The red isn't that red in real life, but I think I wanted to make it redder because of the passion and the water. You know, these rivers, they are the lifeblood. They are the lifeblood of the planet. So maybe that's why it went red too. I don't always know why I'm doing things, so I just go with it and trust it. So one of the things I really learned when I was doing this work, I was studying with the Audubon Society, Cornell University, anybody I could find that would help me understand the issues in Florida, and I soon came to know that the birds tell the story. They tell the story of what's going on in the environment. So the birds, I suddenly became a bird painter, not just a landscape painter. This is a dusky seaside sparrow. It only lived in one small area in Florida on Merritt Island. It's extinct now because of the space station there. They did mosquito control, they poisoned the birds, they ruined the habitat by lowering the water, changing everything. So this bird is no longer with us. I got really sad when I found out about that. Didn't have to go that way. If they had been a little more careful, we could have had the space station and the bird, but they weren't careful, so the bird's gone. That's how vulnerable things are, you know? Not careful, we lose them. Okay, this is the scrub jay, the Florida scrub jay. It's so washed out, sorry. This bird is one of the most endangered birds in Florida, and mostly because of loss of habitat or habitat fragmentation. So, what did I find out this last year when I was in Florida? I found out that there was a proposed 36-inch gas pipeline to go down through the state, and it is supposed to go right through the preserve where these birds are. If it does, because they take a 100-foot wide swath of land, these birds are going to be gone. So what did I do? I fought the pipeline. Okay, so we're leaving Florida, we're back up on Hemlock Lake. Good old Hemlock Lake. This, I was given an opportunity up here to have another solo show at the Davidson Gallery at Roberts Wesleyan. And it's a real honor. And by that point, I was really hooked on environmental activism with my art. So the issue for me had become fracking in New York State, trying to keep it out. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want any of these things that I love in New York State to be destroyed by fracking. So I did a whole body of work on that, and there's one piece for each of the 11 Finger Lakes, and at the head of the show traveled around. I went to 6 different venues within 2 years' time. One of them was at Livingston Arts last year? Or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And so this one is Hemlock Lake. It's got those eagles in it again. It's got somebody praying for saving the lake. And each one of the lakes has the Google Earth image as I copied it, so that you can see what that lake would look like from the sky. And the show is called The Finger Lakes Above and Below. So each of the different lakes had different iconic and personal imagery kind of woven together with the image of the lake. And the below part is where I studied with Richard Young, the geologist who was here giving a presentation last week. Did anybody see that? Yeah. So he mentored me and gave me his PowerPoint presentation so I could understand what was going on below the surface of the earth and the shale beds. And so I had a 15-foot long presentation, my rendering of that, so let's go to that. So this was the way the show looked at St. John Fisher College last year in July. That was one of the last places that was shown. So you can see each one of the lakes in the order in which they lay. And, you know, Canisius, Hemlock, Canadice. I have Canadice mandala stuck in here. Honeyoi. What's the next one? Canandaigua. Yeah. Okay, call it out, folks. What's the next one? Yeah. And then
I forget after Cayuga.
Seneca, Cayuga. This next one is Owasco.
Otisco?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I didn't even know Otisco existed until I did this body of work. That's how much fun it is to do something like this, because the research will take you into all sorts of interesting places. So then that bit along the bottom there, that was my artistic rendering of what goes on when the shale bed's fracked and how it travels and reaches other points, reaches the aquifer, reaches wells, other wells, reaches the lakes, and how it's poisoning the earth. And I actually also was told where I could find some real Marcellus shale, which is the shale that they frack. So I went and I gathered up some Marcellus shale, and I have that spread out on the pedestal beneath the rendering, so people can actually see it's black. It's a black shale. It's very oily. That is actually the only lake that has a man-made image in it. And I just was inspired to put that in because there's a chapel there, Willard Memorial Chapel, I think it is, in Auburn, the north end of Owasco Lake, that has, it's all Tiffany. It's all Tiffany glass in there. And it's absolutely phenomenal to go in there. So I chose this one image out of all the beautiful glass there because to me it represents so much. It's like this continuing weave and circle of life. It's like a Celtic circle, and they couldn't tell me exactly what it was, but to me it represents a lot of different things. The four directions from the Native American ideology, and I just like the way it's up there. So I did that, and then there's Fillmore Falls, I believe that is
Fillmore Glen.
Fillmore Glen. This is one of my last pieces. I started doing body work on the Adirondacks. It's a place I've always loved. And I don't know anything special going on about it right now, but at some point it too could become vulnerable to fracking if they decide to go after the Utica Shale at some point. So I'm just on a mission now just to express my wonder and my joy at what's there, and hopefully others will feel that too and want to preserve what we have. So I think I'm going to have to stop right now. There's more images, but oh well. Thank you for putting up with me here and our crazy technical difficulties.
So can you talk just briefly about how an artist deals with that fact you can't make every leaf?
Yeah, you see these squint lines here? It's called, that happens from squinting. And when you squint, you kind of knock out all the little details and you see the bigger shapes. You see the values easier. Everything kind of comes together it gives you an idea of what's going to make a strong composition. It also leaves you with a slightly distorted facial expression. You can tell a landscape artist by the squinting. Yeah, and a lot of it is just, sometimes I like to pull in a few details along with these larger masses of shapes and colors, just so that you do have that little bit of push and pull, you would call that. Is that explained? Pastel actually has a texture to it, unlike the other mediums, because it's not wet. So these ground pigments, it's almost a three-dimensional medium. You might call it a three-dimensional medium. And it's become very, very popular. It is, more archival actually than an oil painting. So it's a very special medium, finally getting what it deserves in recognition. Edgar Degas, of course, used them. Mary Cassatt, if you ever want to see an incredible pastel up in Rochester at the Memorial Art Gallery, you'll see how, you can actually see how she layered and see how Degas layered. It's very obvious in their works because that was the style of the time. I don't, I do have the broken marks, but not as much as they did. And mine's a little more contemporary than what they did at that time. Theirs was more impressionistic. I lean towards impressionism, but I'm not, I wouldn't call myself an impressionist painter. So, and the other thing about it being a three-dimensional medium with these little grains, they sit on top of the paper, there's no water, I don't use any fixative, nothing to flatten it out. So because there's these little grains sitting on the surface, the light can not only reflect off of the color, but it also refracts like a rainbow. So you get an extra element of what would you call it, an excitement, you know. So these are the originals. You can take a look at these. This one of Letchworth is actually a very old one. I think it's at least 10 years old. My style has changed more a little since then. That's a little more like the actual local color would be in the landscape than some of the ones that I've done since then. I also wanted to point out that I don't always travel distances to get inspired. Sometimes the light is just perfect right in your own backyard, as it was in this one. So this was just right off my deck. I could see this one night, one early evening, and said, I really love that. I'm going to paint.
So thank you, Gloria.